alive yet, so there's no silence.
We are now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to All Things Star Wars, the greatest Star Wars podcast in the galaxy. I'm Mr. Jason Roskam. With me here each and every single week, be Darth Vader to my Palpatine, Dave Martin. Hello, Dave.
Hello, Jason.
How are you?
Oh shit! I gotta turn down the volume of my iPad.
Yeah,
and now I'm better.
Yeah, it doesn't help when you yell into the fucking mic.
Well, that's the way I know that I have some shit turned up that I'm not supposed to.
Yes. So anyway, how's it going?
I survived yet another week of class and now I'm on the home stretch. I got ridiculous papers and finals coming up, and it's just a shit show. So I can't wait for the semester to be over.
How much more time do you have?
This is the second to last week.
Oh,
okay. So it's professor cramming everything they can into this week before the next week when they focus on finals and shit like that. So it's this past week was brutal. I had a really tough time focusing, and today was like just a and just relax.
Sounds great.
Not look at schoolwork type day, and then enjoy the weather, because apparently it's going to be a shit show tomorrow, which allegedly you're going through a shit show right now.
Yeah, thunderstorms, weather warnings, floods, all kinds of cool stuff. So anyway, what are we talking about this week?
So I think I put it in the notes, or I may not have. I'm fucking around with the volume right now. So say something.
Of the episode, something.
What? Say something.
What? Something.
Say something.
I'm saying something.
All right, very good. All right.
What the fuck was that?
The volume was all fucked up.
Oh my god!
I've been in the sun like all day, so I'm like dehydrated, and I'm trying to rehydrate with Diet Cokes, which is not.
Yes, that seems smart.
No, it's not. It's not smart at all. While I was kayaking, I had a Gatorade, and that's it.
It's better than Diet Coke. I'll just say that. Yeah. I don't know how much better, but
well, I mean, for hydrating in electrolytes and stuff. Whatever. What are we talking? Oh, yeah.
I'm asking you. What are we talking about?
Because things are so crazy right now, and Jason's in the process of packing up and getting ready to leave Mississippi, hopefully forever. And I'm up to my fucking potato eyes in schoolwork. We decided to do something easy, and we were talking about the soundtracks and everything else. And if anyone saw the Instagram post I posted earlier this week, and I got my Star Wars soundtrack LP going through my big stereo system in the room here, and that made me very, very happy. So we decided to do the top 5 Star Wars tracks.
Yeah.
So right from the get-go, these are individual tracks. These aren't like the soundtrack of the movie. So we're not like ranking the entire soundtrack in the movie.
Right.
Though frankly, that's impossible. God, it'd be nearly impossible. Nearly impossible.
It'd be a lot of research.
Yeah, and there's music that's better than the movie, and there's music that's better than the soundtrack as a whole in some cases. So we're going individual tracks for this one, and it's our top 5. So
and we had a lot to pick from, so it's going to be interesting. And we, much like before, we haven't seen each other's lists,
right?
So I don't know what your top 5 is. You don't know what mine is, and as we get into it, we'll discuss it. But before we get into all that, you have a day in Star Wars for us.
Yes, since I was the one who was able to start up the notes first, I got to pick the day in Star Wars. And it's same as, Jason mentions it, sometimes you go into Star Wars app and you scroll through it, it's just a bunch of bullshit. Just, Star Wars episode 3 was released in Thailand today.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit?
Yeah. Great for the Thai people. We don't really care.
Right. So I found one. So July 21st, which is Saturday, which hopefully the day that Jason will be making his triumphant return to New Jersey. Star Wars is re-released for the first time with C-3PO dialogue that's been added. I'm actually gonna read you the dialogue.
Okay.
All right. So straight from the Star Wars app, it says Star Wars is re-released for the first time, adding a new line of dialogue that has been scripted but omitted from the first release. C-3PO says, the tractor beam is coupled to the main reactor at 7 locations. A power loss in one of the terminals will allow the ship to leave. As we remember that ad. I mean, well, at least we knew that it wasn't like in the original theatrical release, and it was one of those things that was added. And I know we've talked about this before on the when we did our reviews for Project VCR. Obviously, the re-releases in 1997 were not the only re-releases.
Right. Yeah. Lucas has been tweaking with it since the very beginning.
Right. And this is the first of those re-releases.
So you're saying that entire piece of dialogue was all added after the original cut of the movie? Like It was added in 1978.
Yes. July 21st, 1978.
No shit. Because that's just a piece of dialogue I've always thought of as being in the movie.
Yep. So I thought that was interesting, especially since we've definitely talked a lot about the special editions and re-releases and stuff like that.
Well, and it's weird too. It's weird now thinking about it as that not being in the movie, because that's what we've always known. Because I remember that scene because it's like flashing through like the maps and shit as R2's connecting to the computer. Like, is it just there's just no dialogue in the original cut while you're seeing all those images?
I think, if I remember correctly, there was just the dialogue was just basically like, here's the layout of the Death Star. And it's like, and then like here's the princess, and it like showed like the tension level or whatever. Yeah. But that entire sequence, it was added to when you see the image of the Death Star as it's kind of like going from like through the floor plan. Yeah. It's just overlaid into that image. Huh. So it's not even like they had to have like a visual of 3PO or anything else. It's just, they just dubbed it in and made the re-release.
I mean, it worked. Yeah. Like I said, I can't picture the movie without it. Honestly.
It's strange. And you think about in the special editions, it makes you really wonder, somebody who's seeing it for the first time, they may not know. Although some of the in their special editions, some of that shit is like obviously like the technology is different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the CG versus the traditional effects.
Yeah, it's not.
I like that though. That's a good day in Star Wars.
Yeah. See, I had one job.
All right, and you mission accomplished. What would Lando say at a time like this?
It's a dynamite.
So, I want to give a quick shout out real quick to Mark Somerville from our private Facebook group. He's been in there for a little while, I think, and he made a post a couple days ago basically recommending a topic because he referenced last week's episode where we're like, we don't know what the fuck we're talking about next week. So he made a recommendation, which was actually really good. Unfortunately, we had already picked this episode title by then, but I do like his suggestion. He suggests we do like a top 5 Star Wars books list. Now that could be a challenge because I would have to go back and reach back into the hundreds of books that I've read over the years and try to remember which ones really impacted me. But it was a good idea.
That would be tough. I mean, but the beauty of that is that Wikipedia would probably give us the list, and we'd be able to look at that list and then see, what has impacted us. I mean, let's face it, I did something similar because I have a Star Wars playlist on my iPhone, and it's every soundtrack is in that playlist. So it's every movie soundtrack, and a couple other random things like Star Wars related soundtrack items. But so it's basically hours and hours and hours. And so I just scrolled through like the list. You know, you have the things that pop into your head right away. And then I scrolled through and found the things that, you know, like, you know what, I'm going to listen to that, and then listen to it. And like, yeah, I remember that. And, you know, it kind of works through it. And I think we would do the same thing with the books. I think it's a great idea, honestly.
Yeah. So, and that's the kind of shit we're looking for. You know, any kind of listener feedback. If you want to hear any kind of topic, by all means, throw it out, especially in something like our private Facebook group where we know we'll actually see it. So, yeah, thank you for that, Mark. And that is something we will consider for the future.
Oh, and it's not, we don't have it written down, but one thing I would like to apologize to is to everyone who posts, like, direct messages us in our Instagram and in whatever else.
Oh, yeah.
Because we check that so infrequently. We've been mentioning how, like, we've been, like, haven't really been posting on Instagram. That's why, like, I wanted to do something at least once a week at this point to make it a point to get something cool out there. I was actually going to do something from the kayak today, but I was too busy, you know, trying to take pictures of eagles. So
and not topple over and drown.
That's not a thing. At least not for me in the 6 feet of water that is the Timber Creek. But so I saw there was a couple of things in there, and I didn't really react to much of it because I didn't want to, like, some of it had been in there for so long that I looked at it. I looked into the IG direct messaging thing, and I felt bad that I had missed some of this stuff. So we're not deliberately ignoring you. And if you don't hear back from us about that at some point, harass us.
Yeah. Poke us on a different type of social media, maybe.
Yeah. I don't necessarily have, like, you can do it through Instagram and DM us. In fact, I think one of the listeners fairly recently had asked if about potentially coming on the show and doing something. So a lot of stuff like that. Like, this 2-man show we got going here is hard enough to get together, let alone add a third body, especially when we're not in the studio. So we're not necessarily averse to bringing people in like we did for the anniversary episode. But it's from a timing standpoint and everything else, it's just difficult. So
yeah, especially because we're doing this remote recording and everything else. Once I'm back in New Jersey for good and we got the studio redesigned, that can open up a whole new avenue for more calling guests and everything else. But for right now with this situation, especially with my sketchy internet, as I'm sure you're hearing all kinds of hiccups, it's really tough.
So far so good as far as your sound. I'll knock on some wood, but yeah. Anyway, that's just mea culpa on my from our standpoint. Just like, we're not ignoring you on the social medias. We pay a lot more attention to the Facebook stuff because it kind of gets in our face a little bit. Whereas Instagram really doesn't tell us that stuff is going on, unless we post something and then we get reaction to it. But like a direct message or something like that, we don't necessarily see. So apologies to anybody who sent us anything and we've missed it.
Yes. One last thing real quick before we get into our personal weeks. I've been paying attention, or been trying to pay attention, to actual official Star Wars news. Not much coming down the wire lately. Official. There's all kinds of clickbaity shit that we talked about last week. You know, all your comicbook.coms and all of those. But that's not official news. Really, officially, I saw the Star Wars show posted, and they were talking about Thrawn, but overall, it seems like Lucasfilm is kind of laying low right now, which may not be a bad idea,
right?
Given all the weird PR that's been going on lately. So that could be a good thing. But yeah, nothing much in the way of official Star Wars news last couple of weeks.
I know they're having, you know, if you're paying attention, because I know I try and repost the Star Wars show for the benefit of everybody that it doesn't already looking at it, but most of you, I'm sure, are. You probably have Star Wars feed. In fact, for my Facebook stuff, Star Wars shit is like the first thing I see in Star Wars. And then it's like, it's Star Wars, then the podcast, and then something else I forget. But I, you know, I'm a fan of the Star Wars show. I think it's a good little 15 minutes of Star Wars information, and it kind of gives you an idea of like what is going on right now at Lucasfilm. And they tend to have good guests and interviews. I know Jason's not too keen on the host, but you know, it's a way to get Star Wars information. You know it's legitimate because it's coming right there from Lucas. So just a plug out there for the Star Wars show if you're looking for news and information and the whatnots.
Yep. So moving right on into our week, I'll go ahead and get us started. This is the last week that I'm recording from Mississippi. So for those of you watching on YouTube, this is the last time you're going to see this background. I'm out of here in just a few days, and I'm really excited. Like I mentioned last week, I am coming home temporarily for a couple of weeks before I have to turn around and head down to Texas. But yeah, man, I'm almost out of here. I'm super fucking excited. I'm disappointed I'm not going to be home for very long, but it's better than nothing. So that's going on with that.
Sorry, as I just was talking about how we ignore the social media content sometimes, I look over and see the chat is blowing up, and Scott Rasmussen's trying to say goodbye to us, and I'm like, oh wait, shit, the chat. So bye, Scott. Have fun at your cardiologist appointment.
Fun. So anyway, speaking of going home, we were talking last week also about audiobooks, like me looking to get into some other audiobook to listen to on my drives. Right now, the pickings are pretty slim. I went through the list of available audiobooks through Apple, and there's not much there. It's either shit that I've already read or Legends stuff. Like they got the original Thrawn trilogy, all kinds of older stuff that I'm like, though I enjoyed those, nothing I really want to listen to in an audiobook and pay like fucking $30-something for.
What about First Shot or whatever?
It's not on there. The Last Shot.
Last Shot, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see it in that list at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Motherfuckers.
Yeah. So, because I searched Star Wars and it was all like the newest stuff. It was like fucking Phasma, The Last Thrawn, and then like a bunch of Legends shit. So, and then of course the Aftermath books, because they went all out for the Aftermaths and the audiobooks.
Right.
So as of right now, I'm probably just going to listen to Thrawn again driving home, which would be good because it'll get me caught up and ready to listen to Thrawn Alliances when that comes out just a few days after I get home.
Right.
Also, I've been so when I watched Rebel Season 2, we talked about it. I bought it all on Amazon and I streamed it onto my computer from Amazon. And it kind of allowed me to do some other stuff on my computer, some like school stuff and everything, as I have it going right beside me because I got my dual monitors here. So I had Rebels going on one side, something else going on the other screen, and it was fucking perfect. And I'm kind of considering doing that again for Season 3, even though I know I'm going to buy the Blu-rays at some point. God, having that fucking online streaming is so fucking convenient, especially when you can watch it on a computer when you're trying to do some other stuff. And I'm sitting here thinking, you know what? I've paid for the original trilogy multiple times, multiple iterations of the VHS, multiple iterations of DVD, Blu-ray. So I mean, why not pay for multiple versions of the full Rebel series?
Hey
also?
Man, I don't care how you do it, as long as you watch it and we get on track for that.
Oh yeah.
Bob's your uncle.
Yeah, it's in the plans. Trust me, I'm really excited to get to that season. But this is actually the first episode that's not about Rebels that we've recorded in a couple of weeks.
This is true.
And that's really my week in a nutshell. A lot of it's been like packing and getting ready to go. I don't know if you can see the suitcases and shit behind me, but I started packing up yesterday. It's amazing how much you get settled in a temporary living space after 5 months. I'm like, God, I've got shit everywhere that I got to fucking pack up.
5 months is almost a PCS, man. That's you can hardly call that temporary.
Yeah, and I did eventually throw out those old computer parts that you were bitching about. I just took them out to the dumpster yesterday, so those are long gone. So we can close the book on that.
And we're all so thankful that are watching on YouTube that you managed to not pack your tank top yet.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I needed to keep out like a couple changes of clothes leading up to me leaving. So this is a nice, comfortable shirt. I figure,
I'm surprised you can even move it that much. Like, it should be like stiffened with just sweat and awfulness, because I doubt you have washed it since you've been back to Jersey.
It's part of my means of protecting it, because word on the street is that some people want to extract this from my possession. So the more unappealing I make it, the more they won't want to
That's-
steal it.
Yeah. Nope.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Well,
all right.
Believe me, anybody who would have the means to be able to get hold of that thing has been in worse places and seen worse shit than that tank top, if you can believe it.
I see. So anyway, what about you? What's been going on with you this week?
So as I alluded to before, it's been a lot of just fucking schoolwork, and I've been reading bits and pieces of the Last Shot, trying to.
You're still working on that.
I want to get through it. I really do. It's my brain just my brain just won't shut off. And I have this I'm dealing with this insomnia, and it's the worst ever. And I try and read while I'm dealing with it, but my brain won't focus like on being able to read. I'll get through maybe a chapter, and then I'll have to put it down, and I'll end up like fucking doing a Sudoku puzzle or something. So I don't think it's helping to calm my brain down either. But anyway, so eventually I'll get through that fucking book. I'll probably end up, we've got done early enough today. I might go outside and put a couple chapters down. It's actually very interesting. One of the things I wanted to bring up, like I guess it's part of my week in Star Wars because I watched the Star Wars show, and I wanted to get your kind of opinion on it. Did you watch the Star Wars show? Did you see
not the whole thing? I think I turned it off for like 2 minutes.
Did you watch the Thrawn part?
No.
Okay. So this is not a spoiler, obviously, because it's on the Star Wars show. But one of the things that they were talking about, they put out on, I think, StarWars.com a audio preview, which may be what Bronco Fett was alluding to when he was talking about the yeah, I know Bronco Fett. I would love to do more Star Wars in school. Bronco Fett had alluded to the fact that it was available as an audiobook. Right. It may have been this particular clip, and as part of, I can't remember if it was part of the clip or if it's just part of what the reveal was. Apparently, part of this Thrawn Alliances has to do with Padme.
Right, and I did see that. Yes.
Yeah, she plays a role in the book, which it's. I'm going to be really, really curious to see how they make that tie-in. They say it's something to do. She's on some secret mission in uncharted space. Let's go. I don't know what exactly she's doing or how relevant it's. I guess it's going to be like picture an episode of the Clone Wars, and something going on with that like that.
Hopefully not as bad though.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Because every fucking Padme episode of the Clone Wars was pretty shitty.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
But I thought that was pretty interesting. One of the other things I did, I made that IG post. I was procrastinating on doing this paper for marketing, and I ended up, I've been trying to get this record player I got from Amazon hooked up to the sound bar that I have that's hooked up to the rest of the room in here. This like sound system through the TV, and I was like, I'm buying cables and adapters and everything else, and it's got like an RCA output, but it's whatever. So I've been fucking around with this thing, and I finally got it hooked up, and I put on the LP for the Star Wars soundtrack. Oh my god, it was so fucking good.
Well, yeah, because you mentioned earlier that you posted a video on Instagram of this. And
yes.
And I had pulled it up on my phone through Instagram, and it still sounded fucking amazing. So I can only imagine what it's got to sound like.
Yeah,
live there in your living room.
Yeah, it was pretty spectacular. And the only bad part is it's a surround sound system that's like 5 channels, and this is an LP that's only designed for like 2 channels.
Yeah.
So you're losing some of the sound quality, but you're getting the original. I mean, it's an original pressing of the soundtrack. So you're hearing it like, I don't know. I think one of our listeners had posted on there on IG something about there's so much nostalgia to it, because I used the 1977 filter in Instagram also when I posted it. And it's the truth. It is. It is about the nostalgia. You know, it's the original soundtrack. Something that we'll get into when we start talking about our top 5 is the variations of the releases of the soundtrack. Sometimes adds more music or than was originally released. You know, this was a 2-record LP that only had 15 tracks total. Whereas if you got the 1997 release of A New Hope, it has way more tracks and combinations
like 20
of tracks.
something tracks, and
so it's definitely it's definitely different, and we'll get into it when we talk more about our top 5. But it was just one of those things where I was so happy to get that hooked up, and also while I was fucking around with the cabling and stuff, because I have to go on my crawl space and run wires sometimes to make because I like having clean wires. Like if I have a little entertainment thing that's underneath the stairwell that I cut out, so like all the power and the Xbox and everything is going to this spot. It's all recessed and blah 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 blah. And I was in the crawl space, and I came, my Star Wars stuff is still in totes. I really don't have any place to put it.
Yes. So
I got out a couple of things. I'm not going to reach all the way back, but you may see the First Order TIE fighter over there for the YouTube audience right there. I'm pointing to it.
I see 2 TIE fighters in the corner. I can't differentiate which one.
You can't tell the difference between a First Order TIE fighter. Look at the color. Let's see the color of the panels, the solar panels.
Well, the video is kind of grainy too because of my shitty internet connection. So sorry, bro.
Anyway, so for birthday or whatever it was when TFA came out, they what was the company? The same company. It's like I something. Hang on, it's probably the bottom of this fucking thing. Anyway, whatever it is, they made these Bluetooth speakers, right? I'm holding up the Millennium Falcon version of it, and this thing is iHome is the company, and they made they had Star Wars versions, these Bluetooth speakers, and my dad got me one, and I ended up buying the other one just because I had to have it. It was on my desk at work,
right?
But yeah, so it's Bluetooth speakers, and the level of detail on these things is really cool. And when you press the demo button,
Jesus Christ, it's so loud. Don't play it too long. We might get hit with copyright.
I know, right? Yeah, you can play it short. So anyway,
fine for the audio, but YouTube, they'll fucking
So I found those and pulled them out, and I pulled out. We talked about. I got my 1982 TIE Fighter figurine, from eBay, and I found my Power of the Force carded TIE Fighter 3 3/4. So I pulled him out and stuck him back there. And some of the books that were in there, I put on the bookshelf. The Aftermath books were put away. So I got those out just in case we want to reference that. So trying to tidy up my living space back here a little bit. Brought out, my gratuitous coffee mug, like Darth Vader coffee mug.
Yes.
Anyway. So shit like that, and it's everything I've done has been some level of procrastinating for something I should have been doing homework wise. So yes, more Star Wars. There was more Star Wars, and I should have been more focused on schoolwork, and it probably wouldn't have taken me so goddamn long. But fuck, it's tough for my.
I love how Kathy tries to keep you on point too. Whenever you post on Facebook that you're procrastinating doing schoolwork, and immediately she comments, "Get back to schoolwork. No Facebook.
Get off of Facebook." So, anyway, that's pretty much it. Like I said, we're recording on a Monday this week because I got stuff going on Tuesday night, and Jason's got his preparations to do. So it's kind of an odd night to record. And the house is kind of empty, and like I kind of use Mondays as like my down day before I start with schoolwork and everything else. So I'm looking forward to maybe reading a little bit tonight and doing some Star Wars stuff today. So
nice,
and the podcast, obviously.
Yes.
Anyway,
and we will go ahead and get this thing rolling with our main topic today. And before we actually start talking about that, got a few notes and disclaimers. First of all, I mentioned this about a month ago, but every single Star Wars soundtrack, if you're interested in any of these tracks, is on Amazon's music streaming service. So if you have an Amazon Prime account, you probably have access to every single Star Wars soundtrack through their music streaming service. You can get it on the they have an app, an Amazon Music app for your smartphone. So you can download the app to your smartphone, fucking stream it through your phone into your car or whatever. But Amazon, we're still waiting for our sponsorship. So we've plugged you so many goddamn times on this show.
Yeah, Christ, it's Amazon Prime Day is tomorrow, and we could have been reaping the benefits. Actually, there's a way that we might be able to do something about that. Remind me offline.
Okay.
Because
I'll write a note.
Yeah. Taking advantage of Amazon. Write that down.
Yes. And I want to just add this disclaimer because just like with our favorite characters and when we rank the movies, these are mine and Dave's just personal preferences. Nothing more, nothing less. We're not looking at them artistically. It's like, oh, well, because he used all these different, types of instruments and everything, it's the most complex. No, it's just, this is my favorite. This evokes an emotional response from me personally, this track, and this is the order that I like them in. So if you don't like our order, that's fine. Everybody's got their own personal preferences. Scott Rasmussen earlier said that the Imperial March is his number one. It's not mine, but I'm not going to dog him for it. But if you really get mad at our order for some reason, well, fuck off, because this is our show and we'll do what the fuck we do.
That's right. Exactly. Fuck you and your fucking opinion, because we're on the show and you're not.
Yeah.
But really, your opinion does matter to us. It's not going to be broadcast in any shape or fashion on the show. So
yes.
Wah, wah.
And any criticism of our lists will pretty much be ignored. So again, save your breath. So we're going to do this the same way we did all of our other stuff. First of all, we've got a bunch of honorable mentions, and I want to save those for the end because in case they fall into one of our lists. So we'll save any honorable mentions until after we get through our main lists. And we'll do the same way we've always done it. We'll go like me, you, me, you know. So,
as long as you're keeping track of that, whatever you say, brother.
I am. Now, do you want to go last? Because if you go last, then I need to go first.
Okay, you should go first.
Okay.
And I wasn't paying attention because I was in the chat. I know you were talking.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've been a real radio operator, so my ability to actually listen and do stuff at the same time is starting to diminish.
I like how the sound of my voice is just becoming white noise to you now.
Yeah, it's that tinnitus, like right at that level. Did we mention the fact that the main title?
Oh no, we didn't. Yes, that's a very good point. Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Right. So let's talk. Let's speak to that.
Go. Me speak or you speak?
Yeah, you speak.
Me,
Go.
you, me. Okay. So yes, the main title, the main Star Wars theme that starts every single movie has started fucking 8 movies now. Not Rogue One. Again, copyright. That is not going to be on our list because, as we both kind of agree, it wouldn't really be fair because that would definitely be my number one. It would be the main Star Wars theme from A New Hope, Episode 4, which leads right into the whole blockade runner chase. That whole sequence is some of the best fucking music you will ever hear in your life.
Agreed. And we definitely we're both on the same page with that. That for me, that it would also have been my number one. And I don't want to use these lists to placate to like, okay, here's the obviousness of the list, you know, as far as like the most recognizable tunes or anything else. I mean, like I was saying to Jason before we came on air, I have a 17 track list that I had to whittle down to 5.
Yeah.
So,
and this was tough. This was really tough to narrow these down and then properly order
absolutely.
these into a top 5.
Especially because as I was listening to it, I would be listening and be like, oh, I remember there's an element to this that I really liked. There's an element to that I really liked. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, maybe not the piece in its entirety, but then it was like, okay, you're trying to take the weight of it out, and it's really, really difficult. And let me say this too. I am kind of a music nerd when it comes to like, I like classical music.
Oh yeah, me too.
So, and I like some of the classical composers. And I mean, John Williams is as good as he is the modern day Mozart, you know, and Beethoven. You know, what he writes is just unbelievable. Whether it's to a a space, you know, love story, whatever you want to call this thing that we're so into. It's still some of the best orchestrated music ever. And it's being done by one of the best orchestras on the planet with the London Philharmonic. So I think there was a lot of times when, and in my list, there's a lot of times when the music itself was bigger than the scene or the movie, the particular episode that it was out of. So, and that's a part of it. And then there's still, like, just like with the main title, like whenever that comes on, like, I think, just imagine when Jason and I were sitting next to each other when Force Awakens, and and like the goosebumps and everything else that you get from that, and the emotion that generates is so prevalent with this music.
And I think that's a great segue.
Did you see this in the chat?
Oh, well, thank you for that, Lynn Brown. That's the Jar Jar theme. Very important.
It's everyone's number one. So we're going to go ahead and not include it. We're just going to go ahead and not include it at all.
We'll put that with the main theme to where it's just so good we can't even justify putting it in the list. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started.
Yep.
And, you mentioned the whole sitting in the theater watching Force Awakens together. Well, my number 5 favorite all-time John Williams Star Wars piece of music is Rey's theme, a.k.a. The Scavenger. Now, I say these both because these are actually 2 different tracks.
They are
on the Force Awakens soundtrack. Me personally, I love the track called The Scavenger. I'm pretty sure this is the one that's actually used in the movie too, because it starts off with kind of like an intro, and when it actually gets into Rey's theme, it starts by being played on a piano and not just the flute that it starts off in the normal theme.
Right.
And yeah, this piece of music is just fucking phenomenal.
So if you remember, because The Scavenger, like I isolated the 2 for my list. So one of them's on the list and one of them's not.
Oh,
because
okay.
It is 2 different tracks.
It is, yeah.
But I will say that Rey's theme itself, you don't really hear Rey's theme until almost the very end, right before they get to the island. And when they're flying to Octu, they're playing Rey's theme, if you remember.
I think, okay, so maybe we're
that's Rey's theme.
Differing as to which theme is Rey's, because when I think of Rey's theme, I think the do 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 do.
Well, no, you're thinking of The Scavenger, because that's when we're first introduced to Rey, but that's not Rey's theme.
Okay, so you're the longer, slower, more symphonic,
right?
The drawn. Okay, because that's less of what I like. I more like the Scavenger theme.
Right. So the Scavenger is really what you like.
Yeah.
But because it represents that's the first time we see Rey.
Yes.
Is the Scavenger. And I'm not disagreeing with you. This isn't a disagreement. This is more of it's definitely 2 different pieces of music. And
yes,
you do hear Rey's theme. It's just like when you think of Princess Leia's theme, and in Solo, John Williams had wrote, Han Solo's theme. By the by, while we're talking about that, is your list entirely John Williams?
Yes, though I wasn't going to limit it to John Williams.
Okay.
But I mean, there was nothing.
All John Williams as well. However, in others deserving mention, there is an item out of Solo that I thought was anyway. But we didn't mention that in the beginning. We just said from the movies, and obviously Rogue One and Solo are not exclusive John Williams joints. So
right, but obviously the better tracks are all from John Williams. Let's be honest. So,
Rey, so your number 5 is The Scavenger.
Yes, The Scavenger, because that's my favorite of the 2 tracks, and like it evokes so many emotions from that first time we saw Force Awakens. You hear this theme, you see Rey sliding down the sand dune, as the track is playing. and it reminds me so much of that time too, because remember, this was in December, so this was a week before Christmas. And when I hear this theme, I think of Christmas because it almost has like a Christmas sound to it with the bells playing in the background and everything. And yeah, I absolutely love it. So The Scavenger is my number 5.
Yeah.
So moving to you.
All right, so I'm going to do 2, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you're going to do your 5 and 4.
Okay. So my number 5. It's so hard.
It is.
It's so
That's
hard.
what she said. But it is, yes.
All right. Since I waited until you already started to mention this, that I eliminated the Imperial March from my top 5 because the Imperial March, along with the main title, is something that to me it defines Star Wars more than almost any of the other pieces of music.
Okay.
And so for me, if I included the Imperial March, then that would have eliminated other tracks that I think are deserving of being talked about.
Well, I'll just say this. It is in my list, so we can talk about it when we get to it in my list.
Perfect. But just for I don't want anybody out there like freaking out because you don't hear me say the Imperial March in my list.
Right.
I'm telling you right now, it was definitely on it. However, I wanted to talk about other tracks. I wanted to get into things that I really liked. I'm just taking a peek at the chat with the Shadows of the Empire soundtrack.
That was actually really good. In fact, the final track, like the finale track on that, was fucking phenomenal. Bronco Fett, we got to have a talk about that.
Yeah,
afterwards.
That's a whole nother discussion. Anyway, I'm stalling.
Yes.
So my number 5 it's a track off of the 1997 release of the New Hope soundtrack. Okay. And it's called Binary Sunset. It's actually the Binary Sunset portion, it's the hologram and the Binary Sunset. Yep. The hologram is obviously what you would think it is. It's basically the introduction of Princess Leia to Luke in the shop. And that piece of music is fucking phenomenal. But the Binary Sunset, that aft portion when Luke is coming out and as you see the twin suns, the amount of emotion that piece of music invokes is I have goosebumps right now just thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And this is my number 5.
Yeah, and just for clarification too, this is what most people refer to unofficially as the Force theme. So I've always ever called it the Binary Sunset just because that's how I've listened to it. And it's ironically, it's not really isolated in the original soundtrack, the original release, like the LP, like that I have over here, because it's tied into the Leia projection and all that.
It's not even part of it at all.
Oh, it's not on there at all.
It's not on there.
Holy shit.
Yeah, which is
very surprising.
But the Binary Sunset, and it's funny too, is if you look at Family Guy Star Wars, and in Family Guy Star Wars, they kind of like they poke fun at it a little bit because they got Chris going, "Ladies and gentlemen, John Williams," and I'll play the themes of People's Court. So they poke fun at it a little bit, but even still, like it's the music that goes into it, and it still hits you in the feels. Yeah. So, Binary Sunset for that could have easily been higher, but just for the other pieces that I have, that to me that's my number 5.
Yeah, it's good, and I will have a version of that in my list as well, and we will talk about it when we get there.
Very good. Okay, so that was my number 5. So my number 4.
Yes.
How are we doing on time? We're
perfect.
All right. My number 4 it's also from episode 4. It's on the original soundtrack. And it's the Battle of Yavin. I think it's about 10 minutes, the entire track. But that battle sequence in the culmination to the explosion of the Death Star, again, I got goosebumps thinking about it. It's one of those pieces of music where when you sit there and you close your eyes and you can see everything that's happening in the movie.
Yep.
And that is one of those pieces of music that without that music, Star Wars isn't Star Wars. It's just one of the probably best examples of it. Straight out the gate with their first movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it just shows how John Williams, just his brilliance and being able to execute and take that entire scene, and the highs and the lows and the jump, and the things that happens during that entire sequence. I said it is a longer piece, but I think it's one of the more important ones, obviously, because it's the first movie. It's our introduction to how much the score is going to influence how much we enjoy the movies.
Yeah, because it's imperative to that scene too. That whole sequence in the actual movie, everything that's going on with the trench runs and all that.
Right. Yeah. And so that, again, it's like I said, I had 17 tracks, and yeah, my 5 and 4 are both from episode 4. However, I think they're good ones. As far as we're talking about our top 5s.
I agree.
All right, so what do you got? What do you got for number 4?
So my number 4 is, as we mentioned before, the Imperial March. So not my number one. I know it is a lot of people's number one. Not my number one, but it's still high up there, and it's iconic. Like it's like you said, it's one of the most iconic pieces of music ever, not just in Star Wars, and they use it everywhere. I think you were telling the story about this was months and months ago, about how you were waiting for some sporting event to start and they were playing the Imperial March. Like some band was playing it.
No, John. Actually, it was when we had John on.
That's right. It was John who told that story.
John was talking about it. He said he was at the it was his cousin's. He was graduating from the
academy, right?
Academy.
Yeah,
it was the Merchant Marine Academy, and they had the their full up band was playing, and they were basically they were playing stall music, and they played the Imperial March, and John was saying it's probably the best version of it that he has ever heard. Fact is, he mentioned it on the show, and we talked about it when we went and saw the Indiana Jones at the Philly Pops, or at the Philly Orchestra. We had talked about it then.
Okay.
Well,
so yeah, very well-known track. So well done. And it was introduced in Empire Strikes Back. And this was something that for some reason didn't click with me for years. And maybe it's because I originally watched the movies out of order, but I didn't realize that it didn't debut until Empire. For some reason, I thought, oh yeah, this has been there from the very beginning. But then you go back and watch A New Hope and it ain't there.
Right. And that was something that when Empire came out, it's something that gave Vader that extra little bit of heaviness as the evil character.
Yeah, and not just Vader, like the whole Empire.
Well, yeah, this is true. Because especially the way they brought it in for with the ships approaching and everything else. There's probably the Imperial March by itself is an iconic piece of music. Like I said, that's why I didn't even include it because you just can't.
Yeah.
But in my list, if you look down through some of the rest of my list, there are pieces of the Imperial March that are in other music and other scenes of the movie that, like, when you're watching that scene and you hear a bit of the Imperial March, you just hear a little bit of it, like the tone of that, it brings you right there. That's why that piece of music is so good, because it is the definition of what the Empire is. And when you hear it in another piece of music, regardless of what's going on, it could be like boom, 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 something happening really fast, and all of a sudden you hear just a little bit of the Imperial March. It's like, okay, that's, that somebody from the Empire or some nefarious character is now entered into the scene. So that's one of those where that piece of music is throughout all of the other pieces of music. And when we're watching Solo and we hear it's even like, again, I'm screwing this up, but anyway, fuck it. For Into the Maw, right? In the Solo movie.
Yeah.
Obviously it's a John Powell had written it, but there's elements of the John Williams scores all throughout that particular piece. And there's pieces of the Imperial March that's in there.
Yep.
It's just one example of that.
Yeah, I know. I remember they used it in Force Awakens too.
Mhm.
And it's funny because we talked so much already about like all the good tracks that were in the original movie and New Hope. The one of the weaker points was John Williams' Imperial theme or whatever you want to call it for episode 4, because there really wasn't much to it. It was like every time it flipped to the Death Star or something like that, it would just be kind of like a dun 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 dun, and there really wasn't much to it. So this was a vast improvement on how you can orally interpret the Empire, I guess. Is that how you would say that? You know what I mean.
Said oral.
Orally. So something like that. Oh, we got Big Lovin' and Thundersword in the chat. What's up, guys? So yes, that was my number 4, the Imperial March.
Okay.
You can't really get any better than that. So my number 3, this may cause some controversy due to how low on the list it is, but it is Duel of the Fates from episode 1, Phantom Menace.
Okay.
Say what you will about the prequels. One thing about the prequels is that John Williams was in top form for all 3 fucking movies.
Oh, fuck yeah,
like,
he was.
The movies themselves may not have been that great, but John Williams fucking brought it in all 3 of these movies. You listen to the soundtracks of these. So fucking good. A lot of them were even better than some of the original trilogy soundtracks. But, you know, he was kind of constrained by the shitty directing that George Lucas brought to the table. But goddamn, Duel of the Fates. You want to talk about iconic. This is another one that has kind of stood the test of time, despite, you know, how kind of shitty the rest of the movie was. Everybody knows this track. Everybody knows Duel of the Fates.
Mm-hmm.
From your hardcore Star Wars fans all the way to your casual moviegoers, everybody knows this fucking track. And you put it in with the movie where this occurs in the actual movie, with all the different battles going on, specifically with the lightsaber duel, Darth Maul versus Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. It was just fucking phenomenal.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this, and you're saying how controversial it is that it's so low on your list.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you that it's not even in my top 5.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I could see that. I could definitely see it. Now, do you have any prequel tracks in your top 5?
I do.
Okay, so that's good then. But I mean, you do agree that all of John Williams' prequel work was fucking great.
It's very, very difficult to listen to any of the prequel soundtrack and not find some piece of it. Like, here's my problem with the prequels as far as the soundtrack goes.
Mm-hmm.
When you listen to it, if you just listen to it straight through, like, and that's what I'll do. I'll drive if I have a longer drive and I'm just okay. I'm in a Star Wars listening mood, and I'll just I'll either put my playlist on shuffle or I'll just listen to an entire episode.
Yeah.
And what I find with the prequels is that the music in its entirety, how everything flows together, makes for one big, really good soundtrack. And it's tough to find. Like, when I was putting together the list, and like I said, I have a lot of others deserving mention. And you're going to find that there's a lot of those out of the prequels. But the music in and of itself was so good that when it was all together, that's what made it the best. Isolated by itself, aside from Duel of Fates and a couple of others, I don't think there was really that many that, stood out to the point where, okay, this elevates it above itself on the list. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying.
The music was so good in the prequels that it was good in the episode it was in, and that's all. That's all.
Okay.
I just it's not about trashing the soundtrack at all for the prequels, you know, by not necessarily having something in my top 5. It's more about how the prequels fit. All the music in the prequels fits together so well that it's tough to isolate one thing out of it that would make me say, okay, this particular track, you know, when I talk about my number 1, when I get to my number 1, that's going to be like, my number 1 gives me a fucking hard on every time I hear it. So
All right. Well, let's keep moving. We'll move on to your number 3. So what do you got for your number 3?
So my number 3 is actually The Scavenger.
Okay.
So, and it's for the same reason. Really, really close between Ray's Theme and The Scavenger. And when I was really thinking about it, I made the same logical argument in my head that based on the same conversation we had when we brought it up with yours. It's not The Scavenger. We directly relate to Ray because that's our introduction to Ray.
Yes.
And it has musical elements that like it bring you up and down, and it brings you. It's so early in the movie, and it's just a really good piece, and it's a very it's one of those pieces that you really makes you feel and brings you back to the movie whenever you hear it, and it immediately brings you to the Ray character.
Yep.
So, and Ray's Theme for me also. Here's why it was so tough to isolate between the two. The Scavenger brings me to the part in the movie and brings me emotionally into the movie where that particular scene and you know everything that's going on. And like, especially if you're listening to the TFA soundtrack, the next track that immediately goes into is the chase scene into the Falcon and everything else. And then I think Ray's Theme comes after that. But like I said, you don't necessarily hear Ray's Theme until the end of the movie when they're flying into Octo 2. The music itself for Ray's Theme is actually very good. It is a great piece of music, much like Princess Leia's theme. It's one of those. It's like, okay, he wrote a character. This is the theme song for this particular character. You may never hear it in its entirety in any piece of the movie, but this is what he wrote out to represent that individual. And I think Ray's Theme was a great piece of music. But anyway, we're not talking about Ray's Theme. We're talking about The Scavenger. And we definitely, I think we hit all the high points for why it makes our top 5 for sure. Just because, you know, say what you will about Force Awakens, you know, it was it was the reinvigoration of the movie canon or whatever.
The cinematic universe.
There you go. Fuck you in the cinematic universe. Like it has Marvel smell all over it. I don't even like that. But you know, it was us getting back into Star Wars movies is when TFA came out, and this was shit. Even in some of the trailers, as we're watching the trailers and getting to hear pieces of music and stuff like that, like The Scavenger was definitely a big part of that. So that's my number 3.
Yep. Very good. And your number 2.
All right. So my number 2. So you would have Duel of the Fates.
Yes.
Okay. Which it's tremendous piece of music that with the operatic singing and everything else. I think that the better piece of music that basically is making the same illusion is actually called Qui-Gon's Noble End. And it's basically the music going into the entire sequence of the fight scene between Qui-Gon and Darth Maul, and ultimately, you know, Qui-Gon's death. And it's another piece of music. It's very similar to Duel of Fates. It has basically the same tempo. There's a lot of the same pacing, except that it has this drum intersection where, you know, you can imagine the force shields, you know, that were separating, you know, come in and out of, and you can really envision the scene. And let's face it, as bad as Episode 1 was, that fight scene is probably one of the top fight scenes in Star Wars.
Oh yeah, everybody loves it. Still does to this day.
And that music, that's not Duel of the Fates. That's Qui-Gon's Noble End. Is that music that's during that piece? And I think when I hear that, Jason and I were at we went to a Star Wars. It was the Philly Pops play Star Wars music, right? And they did a version of Duel of the Fates where they had the choir that was in the background. It was very good. Yeah. And I kind of when I was making this list, I kind of took myself back to that with Duel of the Fates, and I listened to Qui-Gon's Noble End and Duel of the Fates probably 6 times each before we came online. And the the fact of the matter was that Qui-Gon's Noble End to me was it might be equal as far as a piece of music goes, but as far as the movie goes and where it puts you in the movie and everything else, it just put it that much higher than Duel of the Fates for me. That could have very easily, they could have very easily have been interchanged.
Yeah, and now you're making me think I need to go back and listen to the Qui-Gon's Noble End portion, because when I think of that whole time frame, all I think is Duel of the Fates and not really the other part. So I got to go back and listen to that.
So, and here's another thing too about this soundtrack and John Williams. John Williams, I think I was reading in Making of Star Wars, and they had like interview portions with John Williams, and John Williams wrote these longer pieces of score that were obviously divided up and made into certain particular scenes. And this is in all the movies. There's only a handful of times when you're actually hearing the entire, like this was written for this entire scene. Yeah. Most of it's edited in some form or fashion. The names can be misleading in the soundtrack. And personally, I think this is one of those that's a little bit misleading, where you have Duel of the Fates, where you think this is that particular fight, and it's not. Qui-Gon's Noble End is the actual music for that, and Duel of the Fates there's parts of it in that as it jumps back and forth. So it's kind of the point I'm trying to make is the names of these songs or these tracks can be misleading, right? As to where you think you're going in the movie. And what ends up happening is as Thundersword is talking about, is when you listen to a piece of music and you know it well enough that you can exactly what scene you've heard that particular bit of music in. That's kind of where you go. The name of the track necessarily is not going to put you in the best place. Imagine spinning the record around and trying to find, okay, I'm trying to find that particular thing, and oh shit, that's not it. What the hell is that?
Yeah.
So anyway,
yeah, and that's
my number 2.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, when I made my list, I did try to go with actual track names from the official soundtracks. So
same.
So now moving on to my number 2. If you've listened to this podcast from the very beginning, you should have a feeling that this track would be on here. And my number 2 is the Asteroid Field from Empire Strikes Back.
It's a good one.
I have always loved this piece of music from the time I was a little kid. There's so much going on in this. It starts off with them being chased by the Empire and then going into the asteroid field, and it ends with the Han and Leia kind of love theme, as the Falcon's diving and then going into the fucking cave.
Right.
But the whole asteroid field portion, it's so dramatic because of what's going on, and I can't say enough about this. In fact, I don't think I've ever told you this story, but when I was in high school, I actually was in an acting class for one semester. And one of the things we had to do was a musical pantomime, I think it was called. It's basically where you act something out, no dialogue at all, but it has to be to a piece of music. And the one that me and my group did, I had suggested the music that we do the asteroid field, because I had a CD with the asteroid field on it. And it ended up being us running like a race, like sprinters running a race, but something happened and we were all running in slow motion and we're like fighting each other off as we're like slowly running down this track. It was all to the Asteroid Field soundtrack. It was really fun. I still remember like pretty much the entire choreography we did for that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
I'm not, I can't judge. I just killed a mosquito. I apologize. I look distracted. I had theater arts all through fucking high school while I was playing sports and doing everything else. I was a weird nerd. And most of the shit that I would do in those scenarios, where it wouldn't be Star Wars, it'd be Monty Python, just because it was easier and funnier.
Right, of course.
But that's great. I love it.
Yep. So that was my number 2.
That's great. It's funny. I don't think I weighted that song or that track enough, honestly, when I was going through my list. Because even as you said the asteroid field, it popped, boom, the music popped into my head as they're going and clearing the asteroid field, and 3PO is freaking out and all that.
Yeah.
It immediately pops in there. So that's a great one to be on the list.
Yeah, and it's, I'm sure it kind of flies under a lot of people's radar, but for some reason it's always clicked with me. Always, always, always loved that piece.
That's a great one.
So, and then moving on to my number one, it is, to kind of bookend what your number 5 was, it is another version of the Force theme. And this one, the official tracks were Leia's News / Light of the Force. This is from Return of the Jedi. This is after the Death Star blows up, starts off with Leia telling Han, Luke's my brother, blah, blah, blah. But then the part that I really, really loved from this was Luke lighting the funeral pyre with Vader's corpse and all that. And it was that same Force theme from the Binary Suns track.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've told you the story about when I went and saw Return of the Jedi in theaters. This is one of those moments 35 years later that is still ingrained in my brain. Seeing that, listening to this soundtrack as I'm watching this on the big screen as a fucking 5-year-old kid. Can't say enough about it. The Force theme is obviously just one of the best themes throughout the entire saga. They use it in every single movie, but this was my favorite iteration of this. I know you like the Binary Suns version. I like the Light of the Force version, and that is my number one.
That is a great number one. That's a great number one, and not only because of the piece of music itself, but what it means in the movies. I mean, it has such huge impact. Not only for you personally, but think about in the trilogy. The end as the end of the trilogy and where it comes. That's a great piece. I listened to that today, as I was listening to everything else. That's a great number one. I applaud you. This is why this podcast is so good, because we could fucking just do a bunch of bullshit fan service and say, all these common things that everybody fucking knows. But now, if you're listening to this and you're not that into the soundtrack, you just enjoy the music, fucking if go on Amazon streaming or go on iTunes, find that piece of music and listen to it. Download these soundtracks and listen to them. They're fucking phenomenal. Yep. They're absolutely phenomenal.
So that being the case, we only have one entry left, and that is your number one.
So before I get to my number one, Len Brown has, I'm ignoring David Schmuck and Bronco Fett.
I want to talk about that when we're done, because we do have some honorable mentions at the end.
Yeah, sure, whatever. But Len Brown mentions still tearing up hearing Leia's theme. Leia's theme is not my number one, but John Williams playing it at Celebration. That was I listened to it today. Hang on, I got it.
Squirrel.
No, it was my wife calling, and I got to text her and let her know I'm doing a podcast. Yeah, the emotions of that particular moment, and the playing of that song, and shit, and John Williams standing there and doing the direction and everything else. It's fucking, yeah. And like I said, when you talk about the themes, and we'll probably get into it a little bit when we're doing honorable mentions, but the themes that are written, Leia's theme's probably the top of that.
Yeah.
Just because of how pivotal she is into everything that goes on in the Star Wars universe.
Yep.
All right. So before I say my number one, I'm going to text my wife, say, doing the podcast.
This is how we roll, people.
All in a minute. We'll fix it in post.
No, I ain't got time for all that shit this week. So,
are you actually going to put this out before you get on the road?
Yes. Right. That is a definite goal. Oh, remind me once we're done with the soundtrack talk to explain exactly what the fuck is going on with the whole late posting and all that. There is a reason.
Yes. Okay. So anyway, enough procrastinating. Yeah. My number one is The Throne Room. It is the end of A New Hope. and it is. I have chills right now. If I could play it in here without us getting fucking muted on every social media thing that we would have it played on, like the throne room when it starts, the throne room and the end title. It's the end title, like that particular piece of music is actually very long, and one of the things that they mentioned in as referring specifically to the end title, like the end music of these movies. When we're at the Philly Pops and we were doing the Star Wars thing, and the director of the Philly Pops had stood there, was giving some dialogue in between certain things.
Yeah, you can go back and listen to that episode to hear all those details. And
one of the things he said was, stay in the theater and listen to that music that's rolling during their credits, because it's a compilation of all the best parts of the music. And if you cue up the throne room, right? So you got our heroes walking into this giant cavern on Yavin, and like walking towards Princess Leia and looking her absolute hottest, in the movie. And they're walking up towards her. The cymbals are crashing. The fucking like, I cannot play this song at a normal volume. This has to be playing. There's been times when I know Jason has heard me pulling up to the studio, and I like because this will be like my pregame. Yeah, this is my
right. You're kind of hype music.
And this is my hype music, and I'll have the throne room. I'll listen to this shit 6 times in a row, and I will never ever get sick of it. It's just, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just how loud it is, the horns, just the piece, the fact that it's our heroes and they're getting their medals, and it's the triumphance of the whole thing. Whatever the fuck it is, it's a raging huge hard on for me. And it is my apps. There's honestly the main theme. We talk about the main title and the Imperial March and all that other stuff. This to me is even bigger than all that for me, because when you start the throne room, there's blood loss occurring. I can't. I want to play it so bad right now. You have no idea.
No,
in fact, when we're done with the podcast, I'm going to put it on the record. I'm going to put it on the record player, and I'm going to fucking rattle this house with how loud I will play that fucking song, because I love it. It just where it is in the movie, what it means in the movie, what it does to me personally. Like there's no better. There's no better. It was my number one before we even, when we first had this conversation. It was like, well, I know what my number one is now. Let me figure out the rest of it. Yeah. So anyway, and
it's a good choice. It's another just phenomenal piece of John Williams music, and we've referenced it many a times here on the show. So there's not a whole lot else to say about that. It was.
David Schmuck says we're allowed to go like 10 seconds without copyright infringement. Now, I would love to press the test on that, but I don't think we should.
Well, now see the audio, it's easier to get away with it in the audio version of the podcast. The video version for YouTube, fucking forget it, because they are on top of that shit like motherfuckers.
It's like trying to get a t-shirt made with the word Star Wars on it. It's like, wait, no, you're not allowed to sell t-shirts with Star Wars on it. Like, oh, well, thanks for this.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, honorable mentions. Anything that didn't make our list that we want to talk about real quick?
I have a dozen honorable mentions.
Well, I'll throw out 2 right now.
Okay.
And that's the other 2 iconic themes from the prequels. First, episode 2, the Across the Stars track. Another really, really good piece. It was more of the romantic piece for Padme and Anakin. Not really action-y, but still just a beautiful piece of music. Really, really, really well done. And then also the Anakin versus Obi-Wan from Revenge of the Sith.
Yes,
another really good piece.
Yes, that is on, and it's only like on the soundtrack. It's only like 2.5 minutes. You
Yeah.
feel like the fight scene is longer than that.
Well, it's because they recycle the Duel of the Fates
right
at the end of it. So,
but
yeah, I'm talking about when they first start fighting, when fucking Anakin pulls out the lightsaber, does the backflip, and they start fighting.
yes,
That kicks in right there.
that Anakin versus Obi-Wan is on my honorable mention list.
Yeah,
sure.
because it's a very emotional part of the movie too. You know, these two guys are almost like brothers fighting basically to the death, and it got a real emotional piece to it.
So, do you have another honorable mention? For
well, I just wanted to start with those two, and now you can.
So, we already mentioned Duel of the Fates. That's on my and Ray's theme. Those are on my honorable mention list.
Yes.
The asteroid field is also on that list. Getting into some prequel stuff, the Love Pledge. It's the title of the track is Love Pledge and the Arena. Now, this is where I know people hate the scene, and there's a lot of people that hate the scene.
Yes.
It's where Natalie Portman leans in, does the like "I deeply love you" whatever bullshit, right?
Out of nowhere, but yes.
So the music that's happening during, like, it's the beginning of the chaos. The bugs are all like, if you picture in a movie, the bugs are all making fucking noise and all this shit's happening. This music is playing really low in the background, and listening to the music by itself, it leads into this, and they pull the carriage into the arena, and then all fucking hell breaks loose. And it is this almost made my top 5, because the music from where it starts to where it finishes and where it brings you emotionally is very, very good. I highly recommend go back and listen to it from episode 2. Love Pledge in the Arena. You know, listen to that whole thing, and it, like I said, it starts at a place where a lot of people just aren't comfortable with what's happening in the movie, but just from the music, imagine that it's playing low, and then it goes into this scene, and then the all that what's happening during that scene with and then ultimately ends with the Jedi entering the arena and everything else. So really, really just an amazing track.
Yeah, I agree, and I know exactly what you're talking about too. Really, really good piece of music going on.
And I'll mention another track from episode 2. The chase through Coruscant. It's
yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, it was good. And what's funny? It's another scene in a movie where it's just like, fuck, not. The dialogue is overly campy, and it's one of those points in the prequels where I just like, I didn't like the sequence in the prequels, but I love the music, because when you listen, this happened to me with The Last Jedi with the Canto Bight. I like the Canto Bight music. I like the variety. I like the different elements that John Williams brought into it. The same thing happens with this. There's like if you listen to it, the Chase Through Coruscant, there's actually like a little like guitar riff.
Yeah,
in the middle.
Yeah. I know
That's
what you're talking about.
It seems kind of out of place, but it somehow fits in. If you imagine the scene, it fits into that part of the scene.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like this is the London Philharmonic and they got this little guitar riff happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's very, very short too. It's not.
Oh yeah, it's real quick, but it's just one of those things that shows you the ability of John Williams to be able to bring these different elements into it. Bring this particular drum beat. It could have strings and horns in this traditional orchestral fashion, or you could have non-traditional, drums and maybe guitar and things like that. And I think as far as the prequels goes, it's another one that deserves mention.
And that's one of those pieces of music too, that as soon as I think about it, I can immediately picture what's going on. Like, I specifically think of the part where Obi-Wan's like got his grip on that little droid as he's zipping through traffic, and you got those real fast-paced violins going, and it's really cool.
Yeah, there was a little bit of the sound effects that they played over, I think, some of the music that they didn't need to. Even the speed, like the sounds of the speeders and stuff like that. We can get into a whole thing about some of the sound editing choices for the prequels, but yeah, that's two more that from the prequels. Again, listen to the prequels soundtracks. They're pretty amazing.
Yep. And I know you were kind of joking about it before, but honestly, the Ewok theme at the end of Return of the Jedi, I did not hate. In fact, no, fuck it. I like that. Okay. The Yub Yub, the Ewok song at the end, I like it. I don't give a fuck. Okay. It's, again, part of that childhood memory of seeing that movie for the first time in theaters and even subsequent viewings, because it's such a good scene. It fits in so well. It's the whole celebration. It's the end of the trilogy. All of our heroes are still alive. They're fucking celebrating, hugging, everything. And then it's capped off with Luke having that moment where he kind of looks off to the side and sees the 3 Force ghosts and kind of has that moment where he's kind of giving them a nod. And I don't give a shit. Fuck you. I like that fucking piece of music.
So let's over in the chat, Len Brown schmucks tell me accept it and embrace it. I think it's a little bit of a contrast. It's contrast theory, right? Because it says the guy who's in the middle of a marketing class. You're looking at it from here's the special edition version, and then here was the original version that brought, which made sense. You're in Ewok Village. It made sense that they would play that particular type of music. You do have that there. There's good elements to that song, and I a lot of my Ewok hate is more for comedic element than anything. I truly deeply hate the fucking holiday special. That's real, people.
We're not talking about the holiday special.
I know. Well, it's been brought up in the fucking chat. But if we're talking about like the Ewok thing, like it's more tongue in cheek with me. Haha, hey, you're hearing it here. Like, I'm being honest with you.
Yeah.
But the fucking holiday special, look at me in the eyes. I fucking hate the holiday special. You can all suck my balls.
Well, that being said, we've only got a few minutes left before we have to close this out. So
thank God none of the holiday special music made it to this fucking this thing.
Oh, the B. Arthur song. I forgot about the B. Arthur song.
How could you? How could you forget it? Fucking Bronco Fett's been trying to get it. Oh, God.
And more legitimately, neither of us brought up the Cantina Band theme, which was actually kind of surprising.
Cantina was mentioned. The Cantina Band was mentioned in the thing. We're talking about the best music in Star Wars.
Yeah, but the Cantina is good. It's very memorable.
It is.
I can't discount that at all.
I just want to run through real quick the rest of the things that I didn't get a chance to mention.
All right, hurry up. We only got a few minutes.
The Emperor arrives.
Ooh,
it's in
episode
episode 6.
Oh, I forgot about the Emperor's theme.
All right. Well, it's not the Emperor's theme. It's the Emperor arrives. It's a whole sequence. It's a sequence of music that like incorporates the Emperor's theme into it, and it's very, very good.
It's also got the Imperial March, right? It starts with the Imperial March because it's got like all those stormtroopers in the fucking hangar bay as he's landing, and
yes, you have this like this. It comes in small, and then the music just somehow just gets bigger.
Yeah,
like, it's like when they go from the space and you're hyper focused on the shuttle. The shuttle lands, and now suddenly the music opens up into the entire fucking hangar bay, and it just. The Emperor Arrives is fucking great. The Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, that was a good one.
It's another just it's different. It's not what you think it is. It's not like you think it's the title of the movie. But that's not what it is.
It's the one where he's on the sail barge, right? Or where they're like poking him to like dump him into the Sarlacc, and it starts off with dum dum.
Yeah, and you can't help but think of the Family Guy version of that.
Oh, yeah, but it just keeps going forever.
But there's the sequence that again, it's about the sequence that it covers in the movie. Yeah. And then the Emperor's theme is another one.
Yep.
And I'll finish with this. Out of all the things that we could have listened to, the Rogue One soundtrack, there really wasn't anything on there that I could say that even would have made my deserves an honorable mention. There's probably some good music in there. I think I might have some some bias towards it. I try really to give it a fair shot. I really, really do. But I'm not a fan of that soundtrack. However, the Solo movie, there is quite a few tracks that are very good, and it may be because it's John Powell working with and incorporating a lot of our original John Williams score into Solo.
Yeah.
The one in particular that I think is the best on the soundtrack is the Into the Maw, and I mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, it's really good.
It is not a John Williams track, but however, as you go through that sequence, and if you've seen Solo, which hopefully you've gone out and seen it by now, please, people, go. Or if you can go out and see the movie, see it, or make sure you get it when it comes out digitally or whatever, because you're missing a good movie.
Yes.
We don't have time for it, but I had a whole discussion with my cousins about like some Disney stuff and everything else.
Yeah, we got 5 minutes, so let's hurry this up.
Oh, 5. Yeah, we do have 5 minutes. All right.
Yeah.
Anyway, but anyway, that the Solo soundtrack, even though it's not entirely John Williams, the Han theme that John Williams does do exclusively isn't the best track that's on that. I think Into the Maw is probably the best one that's on there.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, this was tough. This was really, really tough to listen to all these and pick out 5 of the favorites. You know,
yeah.
Sometimes as you're just listening to it and you're getting into the particular music.
Yeah,
like Jar Jar's introduction. I mean, what else can you say?
Yeah, definitely. But no, if we were back in the studio and we had unlimited time, we could probably have gone into a top 10 or a top 15 list each, you know, just because of how many good tracks are spread out throughout all these movies.
Easily.
So, but we're going to go ahead and skip social media this week because you've heard it a million times. And fucking, if you haven't figured it out by now, I can't help you anymore. Look at the show description. They'll always be in the show description. But for
teespring.com/stores/all things SW pod.
That's in this fucking show description too. So relax. But next week, it's probably going to be kind of a weird catch-up show because I'm going to be back in Jersey, but it's only going to be temporary. So we're not really going to have a chance to like redesign the studio or anything. So I don't know how we're going to do it exactly, but I know I've got a ton of Star Wars shit waiting for me, as do you have stuff waiting for you when I get home in my house, if that makes any sense. Yeah. So we'll have a ton of shit to talk about as far as that goes for my return to Jersey and everything else. So it'll be something. Don't know how we're going to do it. Don't know when we're going to do it, but that'll probably be a large portion of our next episode. Okay.
And Jason's not going to be able to get into it about exactly the why it takes so long to get the episodes out, but I think a lot of it has to do with his slow ass internet connection. So it's not Jason ignoring everything and you know, shirking his responsibilities, because unfortunately I don't have the technology to do what he does or the know-how, quite frankly. So he's limited in his bandwidth. So that's why sometimes it takes that long to get the episode out. Yes. But not this one. He's going to work on this one and get this out before he travels.
Right.
Hopefully.
Yes. What he said. All right. Well, thanks everybody who's been in the chat interacting, especially some of the new folks, Lynn Brown and everybody. And thank you everybody for listening. And Dave, as always, may the force be with you.
May the force be with you. Now, what do I click?